Do you like mysteries? To wander through the enigmatic mist of the inexplicable? Great. I'm Merc, and here you'll find what you're looking for. Welcome to my domains. The truth dissolves into the mist.
The ancient legend of the Golem of Prague is a story etched in shadow and clay. In the 16th century, Rabbi Judah ben Bezalel is said to have sculpted a giant from the mud of the Vltava River. He breathed life into it with a sacred word. A being of earth and holy intent, created to protect the Jewish ghetto from persecution. When its task was done, or its rage grew too great, the rabbi deactivated it. The inert form was returned to the attic of the old new synagogue, where legend claims it still rests, a relic of sacred power. But stories like this are never truly finished. They are living things. They seep into the stones of a city, into its collective memory, waiting for the right conditions to reawaken. What happens when an ancient curse of clay and scripture collides with the roaring heart of the industrial age? When the ritual is not performed in a candlelit study, but on the grimy, oil-stained floor of a factory? This is not the golem of sacred lore. This is the story of something newer and far more sinister. This is the legend of the Industrial Golem. To understand this monstrous evolution, you must first feel the transformation of Prague itself. By the late 19th century, the city of 100 spires and ancient alchemists was being rewired with steel and ambition. Factories, those new cathedrals of human progress, sprang up along the riverbanks like grim, metallic fungi. Their smokestacks, like blasphemous black candles, pierced the sky, staining the clouds. The rhythmic pounding heartbeat of steam engines and forging hammers became the city's new, relentless pulse. This was an age of profound spiritual dislocation. Ancient folk magic did not vanish. It was simply buried under a thick layer of soot and machine oil. In the dim gaslit tenements where the workers lived, old tales persisted. But now they were whispered not about forest spirits, but about the strange, unsettling sentience of the machines that dominated their every waking hour. It was in this cauldron of progress, fear, and exhaustion that the first concrete reports began to surface. They did not come from rabbis or scholars. They came from night watchmen, stokers, and weary factory hands. The accounts, recorded in hushed tones in taverns and later in sporadic police logs, are chillingly consistent. They cluster in the industrial districts of Smichov, Karlin, and Holy Savas, the engine rooms of a new world. The phenomenon always began with the machines themselves behaving against their nature. A bank of looms in a textile mill would continue to operate for hours after the steam had been shut off, their shuttles flying silently in the absolute dark. A massive hydraulic press in a metalworks would be found descended upon empty air, as if stamping an invisible sheet. But the true terror began when the very residue of industry seemed to gather with a dreadful purpose. Workers spoke of seeing shapes coalescing in the long shadows cast by foundry furnaces. They were hulking, crude figures that stood motionless between the great pistons and spinning gears. They were not sculpted from river clay, but from industrial waste, a patchwork of sintered ash, caked grease, and rust. These entities were never witnessed in motion, yet they were never in the same place upon a second glance. A stoker would swear he saw one leaning against the boiler at midnight, only to find the space empty moments later. Then, an hour after that, a cleaner would glimpse an identical, yet subtly altered form near the coal chute, as if it had walked and reconstituted itself from whatever filth it found along the way. The most pervasive element of these encounters was not sight, but sound, and a feeling that crawled under the skin. Witnesses reported a low, grinding hum that was distinct from the familiar roar of the machinery. It was a sound that seemed to vibrate in the teeth and the marrow of the bones. And then came the smell, a stark, anachronistic violation of the factory's atmosphere. Not the scent of hot oil or coal, but the unmistakable odor of wet clay and ozone, the smell of a storm over a freshly plowed field, a scent that had no place among the steel. Those who dared to approach these silent watchers described a wave of oppressive emptiness. It felt like the pure essence of mindless, endless labor, the soul of the machine stripped of any purpose but its own eternal, pointless function. The factories of that era were brutal, dehumanizing places. They were death traps of exploitation where men, women, and children were little more than living cogs, their spirits crushed by monotony and fear. Is it any wonder that the collective misery, the constant anxiety of being maimed or killed, might have manifested? A psychologist would call it mass hysteria, a shared hallucination born of exhaustion, poor lighting, and collective trauma. It is a clean, logical answer. But let me ask you, does logic ever truly explain a feeling? What if the energy of such a place, the concentrated suffering and the relentless, mechanical rhythm acted as a new kind of incantation? A perverse, industrial Kabbalah that animated not holy clay, but the very residue of human toil and despair. The logical mind clings to the explanation of shared delusion, a simple case of folklore adapting to a new, terrifying environment. Yet the legend of the Industrial Golem takes a darker, more stubborn turn when we examine a series of tragic and well-documented events. Factories that were hotspots for these eerie sightings began to experience a pattern of accidents that defied simple explanation. These were not the common mishaps of a dangerous workplace. They were uncanny, almost intelligent in their precision. A massive, well-secured flywheel would detach from its shaft at the exact moment a worker, who had loudly mocked the Ashaman stories the day before, passed beneath it. Steam pipe, inspected just that morning, would rupture and blast scalding vapor across a walkway, targeting a foreman known for his cruelty. The accidents seemed to hunt skeptics and tyrants with a chilling, impersonal efficiency. The factory floor, already a landscape of hazard, transformed into a hunting ground for an invisible, mechanical malice. This is where our ghost story intertwines with the documented and deeply sinister historical practice found across Europe, including the lands of Bohemia. To ensure the stability of a major new structure, a bridge, a church, or a factory, there existed an old folk tradition known as a boutfor, a building sacrifice, ka. The concept was that a spirit, a guardian, needed to be bound to the place for it to stand strong. Often, this was symbolic, a personal item sealed within the cornerstone. But the older, darker whispers spoke of more literal sacrifices. Could the intense suffering and the lives inevitably lost during the construction of these industrial leviathans have served as an unintentional, yet potent, ritual? Workers falling into wet cement foundations, being crushed by falling steel girders, consumed by the very project they were building. The Industrial Golem, then, would not be a consciously constructed guardian. It would be an emergent entity, a parasitic spirit born from the foundational trauma of the building itself. It would be bound not to protect, but to exist, feeding on the continuous stream of human exhaustion, fear, and pain to maintain its vague, menacing form. It becomes the literal ghost in the machine, a poltergeist of the assembly line, born from blood and mortar. The legend reaches its crescendo in a specific and notoriously haunted location, the KD factory complex in Vysočiny, during the communist era. This factory was the throbbing heart of Prague's industrial might. A sprawling grey city within a city, it was here, in the 1970s and 80s, under the watchful eye of the state, that the reports mutated into something new. Workers on the punishing late shift no longer spoke of vague shapes of soot. K. They described a figure with a discernible, though monstrous, anatomy, like a man but stretched and swollen, with glowing pinpoints of light in its head like rivets heated from within. It was seen walking, with a slow deliberate pace, down the endless aisles of dormant machinery. Its footsteps made no sound on the concrete, but they left behind faint, greasy impressions. Tay called it the foreman, and its appearance was an omen worse than any party official's visit. It preceded major breakdowns that halted production for days, catastrophic accidents that were hushed up, or the sudden arrival of the secret police to take someone away. It was an avatar of institutionalized doom. When the Velvet Revolution swept through in 1989 and the KD works began their long, agonizing decline into obsolescence, the sightings did not cease. They changed, adapting once more. Urban explorers and photographers who later ventured into the derelict, corpse-like halls reported a different kind of presence. It was the profound, unnerving feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by the silent, decaying machines themselves. And on rare, frozen moments, a glimpse, a dark, shuffling figure far down a rusted corridor, a silhouette now seemingly made not of working parts, but of decay, of crumbling brick and corroded metal. A golem sustained no longer by industry, but by ruin. We are left at the mouth of a cold, dark tunnel of a question. What was it? The rational explanation is a powerful one, a psychological projection of human dread onto an indifferent, dangerous environment, all framed by a potent cultural myth. It is a coping mechanism, a story to give a face to the faceless terror of industrial alienation. But let me ask you this. When you stand before a complex, autonomous machine today, a modern robotic arm in a silent warehouse, do you not, for a fleeting, instinctual moment, sense a kind of alien presence, a semblance of purpose without a soul? The legend of the Industrial Golem forces us to confront a terrifying, timeless possibility. If the act of creation, of building something in our image to serve our will, always carries a metaphysical echo, a shadow. The rabbi used holy names and virgin clay. The industrial age used blueprints, slag, and human sweat. Did we, in our relentless drive to build a new world, inadvertently repeat the oldest and most dangerous ritual of all? Spare. We may have stopped believing in the words that animate clay, but we never lost the deep, primal fear of what we might bring to life, of what might look back at us from the darkness we created. The factories of Prague may stand silent now, their windows broken, their halls empty, but in the collective memory of its streets, and in the dark, silent corners of any place where humanity has bent the elements to its will with brute force and forgotten sacrifice, the golem waits. It is no longer in an attic. It is in the sub-basement, in the forgotten warehouse, in the low, residual hum of dormant electricity. It is the ghost of industry itself, a monument not to protection, but to the hidden, terrible price of progress. A creature born not from sacred duty, but from the sheer, crushing weight of the machine, and the souls it consumed to keep turning.
Did you like this mystery? And what is your theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed it, then like and share. I'm Merc, and I'll be waiting for you in the next mystery.